Back, we are breaking down UFC Fight Night Santos versus Teixeira that happens this Saturday on ESPN. Gustavo Lopez. We'll just jump right into the picks here. First prelim. Gustavo Lopez up against Anthony Birchak. Gustavo Lopez, 0-1 in the UFC. Did have a really tough opening UFC fight against Merab Dvalishvili, though. A lot of dudes who come into the UFC for their first fight would definitely struggle against Merab. This guy, Lopez, got a solid submission game. 5 of his 11 wins came by the submission. Also, was probably going to be better on the feet in terms of striking. Birchak, on the other hand, 2-2 in the UFC. And those results came 6-7 fights ago, I think. And he got cut by the UFC. Went on a 3-fight winning streak subsequently, since being cut his last 3 fights, and is now back in the UFC as a late replacement to fight Gustavo here. The thing about this fight is I think Birchak's going to try to use his wrestling. The thing about Gustavo Lopez is the last fight that we saw him against Merab, he got taken down like numerous times, but he kept getting back up. And I think Merab is better than Birchak in nearly every way. And if you're going to give me minus 110, which is the line here, minus 110 a pop, I think I'm going to go with Lopez. It's not the super high-end, maybe it could be an exciting fight, but decent way to start off the card. And I'm going to roll with Gustavo Lopez at minus 110 in that one. Next fight, we've got Max Griffin coming in at minus 138 against UFC debutant Ramiz Brahimaj. Comes back at minus 110. Max Griffin, 3-6 in the UFC, is probably better than his record would suggest with his luck in split decisions, and it does seem like he's been improving. Just watching the film, his wrestling is a little bit better. He seems a little bit crisper. I think Max Griffin is still like a pretty solid UFC fighter, despite him being 3-6 in the UFC. His output is pretty solid. He can really rack up significant strikes if it goes to a decision. His cardio is also pretty solid. He doesn't tend to get tired too easily. Think about the Ramiz Brahimaj. All 8 wins by submission. And he trains at Forest MMA, which is obviously a solid camp. The thing here is the odds. Minus 138 for Max Griffin. Based on what I've seen of Ramiz, I don't think he's like this, just going to storm the scene. Khamzat Chimaev kind of superstar right out of the gate. Max Griffin's still a 9-fight UFC veteran, and I think he has the tools to get the job done here. If the odds were, minus 225, minus 250 for Griffin, I might think about it the other way, but minus 138 is just, as soon as I seen that, I was like, I'm probably going to have money on that come Saturday. So minus 138, Max Griffin, that is where I'm going in that fight. On to the next one. This was a very interesting fight. Darren Elkins, minus 250. Luis Eduardo Garagori comes back at plus 200. Start with Elkins here. Elkins, 14-8 in the UFC. Obviously, solid cardio. Been fighting a lot of solid guys. He's been a veteran of the UFC for probably a little over 10 years now. His last fight was really interesting against Nate Landwehr. He absolutely went to war with that kid. And, based on what I've seen in that last fight against Landwehr, probably should revert back to his wrestling because he had some solid success here. He should be able to wrestle Eduardo to death. Eduardo, on the other hand, 1-1 in the UFC. It's coming off a loss. Grigori's most likely path to victory here is the submission and trying to use his grappling game, but I think it's going to be too tough for him. I think Elkins is better. And Elkins has only been submitted once in his really long UFC career. The thing about Eduardo, too, the guys that he's fought is just not very good at all. When you look at the guys that Darren Elkins has fought and you look at the guys that Eduardo has fought, it's not even close. And, again, he's not one of these guys who I see as being some superstar in the future. So I'm going to roll with Darren Elkins there, minus 250. I don't actually think the price is that bad, even though it's a lot of juice, but Darren Elkins minus 250. That's where I'm going. Yeah, oh boy, this fight. Alexander Romanov coming in minus 400. Marcos Rogerio de Lima coming back plus 300. Alexander Romanov is one of those newer UFC fighters who I could see doing extremely well in the years to come. He's won in the UFC. He's 1-0 so far. Super impressive on the regional scene as well. His fight against Roque last time out, super impressive. He just kind of steamrolled that guy. I kind of see the same thing happening here. But Rogerio de Lima, 6-4 in the UFC, has been losing against a lot of solid competition. It's not a lot to hang your head in, but I just don't really believe in the guy. He seems really slow and gasses really hard in his fights. And if Alexander Romanov is going to wrestle him to death, like I pretty much think he's going to do, I mean, I don't see it. I mean, De Lima's got some good power in his hands, but, you know, these guys, Romanov, Moldova, these guys are made of steel. I don't see him getting knocked out. And, you know, you might look at his last fight, De Lima, and be like, man, this really strong KO power. And yeah, he does have some KO power. In his last fight that he got a knockout was against Ben Sassoli. Alexander Romanov is not Ben Sassoli. I mean, this is probably where the odds should be. You know, it's not a lot of fun just constantly giving out favorites, but I got to go with Romanov here. I don't see Marcos Rogerio de Lima having much chance. So Romanov minus 400. He definitely, if you don't want to pay that kind of juice, could definitely get it done within the distance, and I would expect him to do that, actually. So my thoughts on that fight. Yeah, this one is just like a disappointing fight. Giga Chikadze against Jamie Simons. Giga Chikadze, earlier on in the week, I saw some like minus 400s. Now he's all the way to minus 600. And Jamie Simons up to plus 400. Jamie Simons, his UFC debut. He hasn't looked particularly good on the regional scene either. Giga Chikadze, you know, he's up to minus 600, and that's probably not the worst price in the world given the situation. I think Giga's just going to keep to the outside, play it safe, tap, tap, move, tap, tap, move. They're in the smaller cage here, but I can't see that making much of a difference. Minus 600 is actually a square price, and I mean, the only thing I can say about a fight like this is it is a little bit... I mean, it's great that we have the UFC right now during this time, but, you know, we are starting to see some more uncompetitive fights just because, you know, there's only so many guys that the UFC can bring in, and I don't see Jamie Simons being particularly competitive here, and that's probably a bit of a snoozer. Minus 600. There's a very good chance it's probably going to go to decision, but that's just, you know, it's based off the past performances, but that's probably just reaching. You know, Gig is a nice parlay piece. You parlay Romanov and Chikadze together, and then maybe somebody else you like to get a bit of a better price, but, I mean, that's got danger in itself. You know, just not a big fan of the fight in general. Minus 600, it kind of is what it is. Those are the odds the fight probably should be at. We'll move on to a little bit more exciting fight. Trevin Giles against Bevon Lewis, both coming in at minus 110, a pick'em. Trevin Giles is 3-2 in the UFC, and despite winning in a controversial split decision last time, his ability to really hang with a guy like James Krause was impressive to me. James Krause, for me, is on a different level than both these guys. Problem about that, when you look into it, is that Krause took that fight on like 12 hours notice, and it was still kind of a greasy split decision. Yeah, Bevon Lewis, on the other hand, 1-2 in the UFC. He's fought some very decent opponents for as green as the guy is in the fight game. I like his last fight against Daquan Townsend a lot. I think Lewis can have some success here, just grinding on Giles. Tiring him out. I mean, these guys, if this gets to the third round, they're both likely to be pretty tired. These guys are not known for the greatest gas tanks in the world. But I think Bevon Lewis can really grind this guy during the first and second round. And I think Giles will come out significantly more tired. Minus 110 seems like a very square price on Lewis. I think he should be a slight favorite. minus 130, minus 140 range. Minus 110 seems just fine to me. We move on to the main card. Claudia Gadelha against Yan Chonan. Claudia Gadelha comes in plus 137. Yan comes in minus 163. Claudia Gadelha, 7-4 in the UFC. Doesn't have the greatest gas tank in the world, and she got dropped last time by Angela Hill. That could probably leave a little bit of an opening to Yan to get her first UFC finish. Not a lot of finishes in, especially the strawweights in women's MMA, but Yan Xiaonan really has the ability to put it on you in terms of significant strikes and volume. And, Claudia, she's a very solid UFC fighter. She definitely could have been the champion. Just kind of see her getting pieced up here a little bit. There's one concern that I do have about Yan here. Yan kind of wants to move Giga style, move, strike. And this is in the smaller cage now, and Claudia certainly has better wrestling. So if Claudia is able to get her down, and that is a big if, I think the smaller cage definitely favors her. The one problem that I had with this fight was the price. When I first looked at it, I was like, okay, Claudia Gadelha is probably going to come in as a small favorite, and that has not been the case. She's an underdog, plus 137. It's not that easy. The thing is that this probably goes to a decision, and Yan is just going to put out such insane volume. As long as she makes sure she doesn't get taken down, another big if, I think she ekes out a victory. I'm not thrilled with the price, minus 163, but that is where I'm going to go here. Despite that, yeah, I just think Yan's going to win. I think she's quick enough. I think she's prepared for this. This makes sense, but again, price, not great. We move on to Ian Heinisch against Brendan Allen, and what should definitely be one of the better fights, at least in terms of future prospects of the night. Ian Heinisch comes in minus 110. Brendan Allen comes in minus 110. Ian Heinisch 3-2 in the UFC. Was not great with his takedown defense last time, but was always able to get back up. Ian Heinisch, from what I've seen out of him, during his five fights in the UFC, I have really liked what I've seen. Brendan Allen, on the other hand, 3-0 in the UFC, has fought some real nice competition so far, and he does look clean. Dude's a legitimate prospect for sure. Does get hit a lot though. His defense, he's walking backwards, and his counters. He does get hit a lot, and that's a little bit of a concern for me against a guy like Heinisch. He can really, he's got some power, Heinisch. Brendan Allen also doesn't have a ton of output, and if this one goes to a judge's scorecard, I find it very hard to see him winning that. Ian Heinisch is minus 110, and I thought he'd be a bigger favorite. Very excited to bet on Ian Heinisch. He's probably my favorite bet of the night, minus 110. There it is. On to the next. Raoni Barcelos, minus 400 against Khalid Taha, plus 300. A little bit of an interesting fight. Barcelos 4-0 in the UFC. He's got really good ring IQ. You can see him just picking apart Taha, likely outpointing him while avoiding Taha's power. Taha comes into this fight 1-1-1 in the UFC. He is 1-1-1. He's got a no contest for getting popped by USADA. So he has been off for the last year. And the guy's got decent takedown defense, which could come into this fight significantly. He has been thoroughly unimpressive based on what I've seen, though, and that's kind of worrying based on what we know with the USADA thing. But he could be coming into this fight as the best version of himself so far after being off for a year and hopefully improving. It's a little bit of a guessing game. Not a super competitive fight for me. I think Taha does have at least a somewhat decent chance of knocking him out. So if you want some kind of crazy 20-1 prop, that might be the way to go. I actually haven't looked up that prop yet, so don't quote me on the price, but the official pick here is going to be Barcelos minus 400. Bang. We move on to some heavyweights. Andrei Arlovski against Tanner Boser. Andrei Arlovski coming in at plus 240. Tanner Boser comes back minus 300. Start with Arlovski here. Arlovski is 8-9-1 in the UFC. Definitely has fought the best of the best. And despite only being knocked out once in recent times, I do kind of have apprehensions about his chin. He's over 40 years old now. And like in a lot of his fights, he does get buckled. And based on, I mean, if you know a lot about this Tanner Boser guy, he's just been knocking guys out for fun the last couple fights. So I'm a little bit worried for Arlovski there. Boser, 3-1 in the UFC. Like I just said, awfully impressive in his last 2 outings, getting knockouts. Those opponents weren't that great, though, especially compared to Arlovski. And this is like his biggest step up in competition, I think, in his entire career. Thing about Boser, he looks in absolutely fantastic shape and does look to be getting better every time I see him. He doesn't come in at that 265 usually, Tanner. It's usually a little bit lighter than that. He's got good cardio. This price is brutal. The minus 300 is absolutely brutal. And I don't think I can go there. I would really like to. If Tanner Boser was like minus 175, minus 150, I'd probably be into it. I think Andrei Arlovski is just a little bit too savvy. And even though I worry about his chin, and I've seen what Tanner can do to dudes these last couple fights, this is a price play for me. Plus 240 is just too much. I feel like too many people are just lumping on the hot prospect off his 2 crazy awesome wins, but that's where I'm going there. I think Tanner Boser is more likely to win, but plus 240 on Arlovski is far too much money. I would have this in the plus 150, minus 175 range for Tanner Boser if I was making the odds. Arlovski looks like a value. On to the main event. Thiago Santos comes in as a minus 250 favorite over Glover Teixeira, coming back at plus 200. Start with Glover. He's 14-5 in the UFC. He's kind of had this resurgence in his career and everything, but I have been unimpressed with the guys that he's been fighting, even though he's on that 4-fight winning streak. I mean, he's done everything that you could ask. Just beat the guys that are in front of you. And he has looked seriously good in a lot of those fights, especially the Anthony Smith fight. He looked like, very solid. Don't really believe in the guys that he's been fighting, and Thiago is just a massive step up in class for him. Thiago Santos had a reasonable shout at beating John Jones. Plenty of people thought he beat John Jones. There's definitely an argument to be made there. Glover Teixeira isn't John Jones. Thiago Santos, 13-6 in the UFC. Dude, I think is just a little bit better, a little bit, younger than Glover. I'm not really buying into the hype with Glover, this Renaissance career. I think Thiago's going to be way too much. I know he's had some problems with his knees, so there is a little bit of a question mark there with how healthy Thiago is. But I don't think he would be coming back to fight right now if he wasn't healthy. I'm going to bet that he's healthy. I think Thiago gets it done by knockout within the distance. I definitely don't see this going 5 rounds. So if you want to improve on that minus 250 price, that's how I would do it. I wouldn't even mind like first round knockout for Thiago Santos, as long as that's in the plus 800 range. That's what I would think. Again, haven't looked up that prop, but that's what I like for UFC Fight Night Santos versus Teixeira. If you enjoy this type of content, we're putting out a UFC video as long as there's a UFC card every weekend. Lots of videos going up every week. You can follow us on Twitter, on the House Pick 1, Instagram, on the House Picks. Please subscribe. Please like. Leave us a comment. Who's your favorite bet of the week? Mine's Ian Heinisch at minus 110. What's yours? Good luck this Saturday. Thanks for listening.